All right, guys, we are back. We've got the motor guy, Derek Harris from Harris Performance, here to kind of tell his side of the story. I never thought I would be an interview guy, you know what I mean? But here we are. I think it's important. And the reason I'm doing this is because I do believe it's important that everyone gets to speak their truth, and not to take anything away from the Deegans, but they have a humongous platform for people to be able to speak their truth. And so they're going to have that opportunity, whether they want to put time into it, which likely they don't, or they do, they have that opportunity. And so I'm here to obviously give you guys a little bit of a shot at that. Now, on the reverse of that, I've decided to put it on my personal channel where we're not monetizing this footage, because I don't want to be the guy that, even Deegan said it, like the YouTubers are like hooking onto this because they want to make money off of it. I don't necessarily have an interest in making money off of it. I have interest in, I know you guys, and I feel it's the right thing to do for you guys to be able to tell your story. So here we are. We're not making money off this, but we do want our version of the truth to be out there. Everyone has their own version. It's always a tick off, right? Like, we all see things a little different. I think that's something for all you guys that are commenting to understand, is like, hey, when you're heated, when things are nervous, anxiety's happening, every story isn't going to be a dead on, but the gist of the story is the same. The events went down and everyone recognized that. And I kind of want to get your side. So the first thing that I'm seeing that people are really wondering about, and I can explain this, but I think it's cool coming from you, you were there, is what is a claim rule? And, is it like is someone stealing a bike from someone, right? Because I think a lot of the Deegan fans just assume like, hey, someone's coming there to steal the bike. What is a claim rule?
Man, so the claim rule's been around forever, and I've never seen it executed in my entire career. And I was young when I think the last claim that happened did go down, which is one of Mike Alessi's bike. I think Adam Chatfield claimed it. So the claim rule is in order to limit the amount of money that is spent in racing. And so by putting a price tag on a motorcycle that it can be purchased for, you're basically saying, hey, you can run anything you want. You can go build any part you want. It can be amazing and custom and unique and all of your own. However, if that part's really expensive, or if it's really special and you don't want that technology out, like if it's very secret, somebody can go claim that and now it's theirs. Yeah. And I really think that from an amateur racing perspective, it's a wonderful rule, because at the end of the day, amateur racing is about the kids and who's the most talented kid. At least in my opinion, that's what it should be about. We're not trying to see who has the best team and the best bike and the best program. And that's kind of what amateur racing has become over the last 10 to 15 years. Probably in your day when you were an amateur, I remember in my day as an amateur, the Team Green program was rolling, or the Suzuki program was rolling. However, there were a lot of kids on a Team Green program. However, they all got the same exact equipment. And then whoever was the baddest dude got moved up to the pro truck. Nowadays, they'll go get a kid off of 85s. You're a factory kid, and now you get the best of everything, and we're not going to support anybody else, right? And because all that budget, you only have so much, so they put a huge budget into one kid as opposed to the same budget into a lot of kids. So the claim rule is trying to level the playing field. And is it unspoken? I don't know. That's a great question. This is the first year in my career that somebody's executed it, right? Everybody knows the stigma. They know that, hey, you go claim a bike, you're going to piss those people off because those factories are going to be unhappy. But at the same time, those factories have to adhere to all the other rules in the rule book. So are they really going to be that mad? And I have direct sourcing on this, that Hymas's bike is something you can privately build. It wasn't a factory bike. And DeFrancesco's bike was a pro circuit bike, through and through, as far as one you can buy, not the pro bike. It was a Team Green, off the shelf. You call Mitch up and he'll sell you every part of the bike. So I have very good sourcing on that. And if somebody wants to reach out, they could reach out to those individuals. But so those teams know there's a claim rule. It might happen.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, because it is a little confusing for people, because it isn't, and I agree with the rule too. I do believe that after kind of being in this and understanding a little more, there could be some nuances to change in that. There could be like some revisions that make it a little better for the person that's getting their bike, bought from them, right? And in Deegan's defense, there's a lot of sentimental value I think that he was gonna have from that bike. They needed the bike. I watched his YouTube clip where they needed the bike for these next 4 rounds of races they planned on doing. There was some stuff there that would have put some high stress on them, where I could see where they'd be like, but what? Like, what are we going to do? But they have enough support where I'm sure something would have showed up for him. But I get that piece. Another piece is like, I'm sure did you watch Brennan's interview that we did?
Yeah, so I watched his interview, and I feel like this he's a kid.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's some things in there that I think he probably is a little bit off of what I experienced. I was there for everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a couple things there that I read the Racer X Racerhead report. I can say that there's some complete inaccuracies in what was said there. 5 minutes in the office. I'm going to tell you right now that Brennan was in there by himself. I watched this. I was there for at least 20 minutes. Now, how much of that time was with Brian? I don't know. I watched Brian walk into the office, but I have no idea. I wasn't in there. I don't know what was said. I only know what I was told. Right. So I would say that the truth lies somewhere in the middle of that. Right. Whatever Brennan says, what I saw, I had an individual with me at the time, a witness who thinks that it was about 20 minutes as well. So let's call it 15 minutes, but it certainly wasn't 5 minutes. And to Brennan, I can't imagine how long that felt like. Like you're in there by yourself. It probably felt like 5 hours, right? So I understand his perspective. But yeah, like you said, there's just so many things. So I watched his deal, and I feel like he tried to navigate very maturely around some of the things that happened that I saw. And I feel like I still, to be honest, the word that I'm going to come up with is bullied.
Yeah.
And I think that he still had to navigate some of those, waters of the after effects of that. So I'm really not happy to see what happened to him. And yeah, so that's why I'm on here, to be honest.
Yeah. And so I think something that we've got to address right away that I think a lot of people are curious about, and there's been allegation towards it, is like that it was your deal, that it was like your program, you put him up to it, you gave him all the money, it was you, and you were there to make a profit off of whatever you found. I think it's just like, you probably should come in and tell the truth about like your story behind it all, and kind of where it all started, where it all ended, and just like, what did you have going on, and what was your interest, and even standing up there next to Brennan while he was, in there for 20 minutes or whatever, and the rest of the journey. Because I understand from his story that you were there in the trainer's pits, you were there, but you were ultimately also, what I understand, you were there to support him that weekend as a sponsor and as the engine guy, which at an event like that, all the guys are having someone that's looking over their bike, making sure it's not going to blow up. Right.
100%.
So
yeah.
100%. That side, but I am curious. I know a lot of people are curious to know your side of the truth on that one.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I feel like I've been made to be the villain. I don't know if my hat comes off on here, but
villain motorsport, I like it.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the Deegans, I think you pulled that video down, but basically claimed that I was the one behind this and I'm trying to steal their secrets. And so that's coming from that camp. And to be frank, I think he needs to watch his words on that. He obviously, I don't even know Brian. Like, I've never met him. I don't even know if he knows what I look like prior to this video, right? So at the end of the day, when I was made aware of what Brennan was going to do, which was earlier on in the week, Brennan brought it up, and I'm like, whoa, dude, you have got a pair of cojones on you. Like, holy crap. Like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, I really want to ride that bike. And I'm like, whoa. All right. Like, dude, get the popcorn out. Like, I want to see every bit of this. You know what I mean? Like, I want to know what happens, because it's been, to be honest, there's been individuals in pits around me and individuals that have brought this up for years. Sure. And nobody does it, right? Like, never happens. Yeah. So at that point, I felt like, hey, I need to advocate for this kid. I read the rule book. I feel like this kid is a kid. And if you're in my camp, and you could attest to this, if you're one of my guys, dude, I got your back, and I'm loyal to a T. And that might be a flaw of mine, 100%. I know it's a flaw of mine. But like we were talking about this the other day. Like, the very first time I met you, you knocked me on the ground at a dirt bike track because you're way faster than me. And fast forward like less than a year, and here I am building you motors and bikes to go compete in Supercross and win Texas Pro Championships and Pro Challenge. Like, I've got your back. You're one of my guys. So when Brennan told me that, I'm like, I'm all in, dude. If you need any help, if you need any assistance, if you want me to support you, if you want anything, I will support you. Because he doesn't know what to tell the AMA. Like, imagine if they said, oh, yeah, we're going to claim the bike, and, well, we'll just leave it in their pits.
Yeah.
Hell no. You didn't claim that, dude. You spent $17,000 to get the bike that you raced. So I can totally see why, like, I'm being painted to be the bad guy. I can totally see where that comes from. But I was made aware early on in the week because I had to deliver a couple engines for Brennan to Loretta's, which is a whole nother backstory. I think is actually probably the snowball that kicked this whole process off. Like, Brennan, when I walked there to Loretta's, had a trailer full of Yamahas with no engines in them because every single one of his bikes had blown up in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the ball that got rolling. And frankly, I barely knew the show fields until Loretta's. That's the most time I've ever spent with them. And it was really just like I had to build a motor for them there at the, they're at Loretta's, put it in a bike. And I got to say, that kid is impressive. He's an amazing mechanic. Like, I would hire him in a heartbeat. He blew me away. So we swapped a motor and he was incredible. So that's the most time I've ever spent with him. But when he told me what was up, I'm like, dude, I'm all in. I will support you in every single way possible. And then that just literally wrapped me into this deal in ways that I never could imagine, just to put it politely.
Yeah. And my question to you is, so I get it. You weren't necessarily involved in the inner workings of his mind and his decision making, but it's hard for the naked eye and naked ear to believe that you didn't have some interest in that bike, right? Like, if I was a motor guy, right, or any support at all, it's like, well, if you do this, I would love to hear it, see it, feel it.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But this is not. There's no harm, no foul, because if Kawasaki wanted to know what was in the Star bike, if Mitch wanted to know, he could surely go buy that bike. He's got all the money and all the resources and everything. Right now, would it create a crap storm bigger than he probably wants to deal with? Likely, right? Likely. But also, would it be beneficial for him to know what kind of horsepower those guys are putting out? Like, just for you to put that bike on your dyno and just know what you have to compete with would be
100%.
before you even took a bolt off of it.
No,
right?
100%. So, like, I had no idea what Brennan's intentions were after he got the bike. He never really made it clear to me other than, hey, dude, I'm going to ride it. And part of the, like, later in the week, I was doing maintenance for them so they could go to Canada. So, like, the Yamahas, when you mod them out, have some problems and you have to look after them. You have to tidy after them all the time. So I needed to do a timing chain, check the valves and all this stuff. So that was so they could go to Canada. I don't know what his plans were, but I'll tell you right now that my YouTube channel would explode if I could get that bike on the dyno here at the track, at the shop. Yeah. So make no mistake about it. Like, if he wanted me to dyno it, I'm all in. Like, I would love to dyno that motorcycle. Right. Yeah. However, he never brought that up with me. It was never discussed with me. It wasn't like, hey, can you look at it? Can you copy it? And now that all this crap has come out, I've had to think about it. Maybe this would be a great business model. Maybe I should go claim some bikes, right? Like, instead of working my ass off to go develop one, maybe I should just claim one and shortcut my way there. But the reality is, let's just say that is a factory bike, which after all that happened, which you can get into, I do believe that they had some parts in there that they didn't want out.
Yeah.
I get some custom parts made here at the shop for stuff that we build. Like, I've got titanium connecting rods that we won Loretta's with last year and we won Loretta's with this year. That took me years to get done, right? Like, this wasn't like a process of like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's go make it happen. Yeah. So I got some custom pistons delivered to my shop that we have done for some KTM Outlaw carts we do that I ordered over a year ago, right? Like, it took me a year. I put my money up and it took a year for that to happen. And that's COVID related. It's not necessarily, normal. But normally pistons take 3 to 4 months for me. I'm not a big fish in this sea. So I got to wait in line behind all these big fishes, right? So let's say I get that bike and I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. And that's cool. Let me go copy it. Dude, it would take me probably, I'm not a CNC shop. We're a small, little, tiny shop. It would take me 6 months to even get all of that put together and copied and put out there, at a price of probably 3 times what I would really need to make it for to make money. Yeah. And now you got to go sell 50 of them at a crazy price, right? Like, probably would be, let's say there's 10 cool parts in there and they're 1,000 a part. That would actually be really cheap. Yeah. Now you're looking at 10 grand in just parts plus the build and the whole thing. And you can do that 6 months later. I'd have to sell 50 of those things to offset that investment. And there's just no way. Like, I don't have that kind of money. Like, we've talked about the other day, like, my life is up and down and whatever. Like, I don't even own a truck right now because my truck caught on fire 6 months ago and I'm still dealing with insurance on that. Like, I just don't have those resources and I wish I did.
So if anyone wants a titanium connecting rod, he's trying to sell them all right now.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch. I need some money. I need a truck. So if you want to buy them, let me know.
Yeah, get to titanium. Yeah, okay. So that makes sense. And I think that's a big question that people have in their minds is like, what was your involvement? And like, what were your intentions with the whole thing? And honestly, selfishly, and like I think a lot of people would agree with the people outside of the people that were involved, Yamaha, the Deegans, the trainer, these guys that are heavily invested in, you know, whatever they were heavily invested in, whether the trainer is heavily invested to keeping his reputation high. And I've heard sponsorship rumors of the bikes being taken away and things like that, which is awful. I actually got that text message this morning that the bikes are officially going back to the sponsor. So whether the sponsor just got mad because he didn't like it or whether Yamaha put the heat on, I'm not here to choose either one of those because I don't know personally. And if Brennan wants to come back on and tell his side of that story, but he literally lost his bikes, right? The kid lost his chip over the whole deal. And I think that's kind of jacked up. Like I truly do. And if he is telling the truth, which it seems like he is, right? It's just not right that a guy has to now go shop for bikes or shop for a sponsor because he wanted to follow a rule. I just don't.
Yeah, I was there the entire time. And I feel like Brennan early in his last video you did with him was like protecting me because of all the hate that was already coming on. Yeah. Right. And so I was there. I was at the AMA office from the second he did the claim all the way through the initial process. And then I was there later on in when he went back up to the AMA offices when they called him up. I was in his pits working on his bike, getting it ready for Canada. And then when ultimately we went over to Caden's pit, which was actually funny because we had talked about, hey, what's your plan next year? What are you doing? Are you going to come down to Texas? And he's like, dude, I think I'm going to travel. I'm not going to just stay and train one location anymore. Yeah. And I was like, hey, you know, obviously he has you as a resource in Texas. And I said, if you make it to Florida, you really need to meet Caden Brazel's trainer. Like he's a great guy you could spend a couple weeks with. So that was part of why we went to those pits. I'm trying to make those introductions and get this kid ahead. Like, let's be honest. All the hate directed at this kid or not hate, he's a top 20 B rider right now. That is a really solid kid. Like, let's not give the kid, you know, let's give the kid credit where he's due. He's not slow. Like that's a top 40 kid in the country in that class. So, you know, so it really sucks to see what happened to him. I'm really frustrated by it. I don't think he did anything wrong. In my opinion, he followed the rule book and I understand that he kicked a hornet's nest. I do get that. You know, there's no doubt about it. But hey, if Yamaha had nothing to hide, he should be riding that motorcycle right now.
Yeah. And my thought is like, you know, you always got to think about like what your decision's going to do to others too, right? Like, and that's where my mind goes. And the whole deal is like, okay, I claim Hayden Deegan's bike. What's that going to do to hurt Hayden? What's it going to do to hurt the family? What's it going to do to hurt Yamaha? And is it worth it, right? Like, and my mind goes, yeah, like it's going to bother them, right? It's a little different. They're not building their own bikes, and I'm sure they're actually getting paid a pretty good chunk of money to ride those bikes. But again, like I said in the beginning, they did have plans with that bike, and it did have sentimental value. And I think that it's hard for a kid like Brennan to necessarily, because he hasn't been through all these experiences and probably had people do him dirty many times. Now he's experiencing it, right? This is going to be a really pivotal, like kind of moment for growth for him to be able to be like, you know what? Was that worth it? Was it not worth it? Now I at least understand what I was doing to other people. How they reacted is out of my control. Ultimately, how Yamaha handled things, I think semi-unprofessionally or maybe fully unprofessionally. But again, I don't know that everything is the truth, right? I don't know. I mean, from what you guys are coming from, I believe what you're saying, but I don't know every word they said to the sponsor, every word they said to the trainer, all this stuff. I think the Deegans did probably as good as they could do. I think maybe if Brian was grilling Brennan, that was probably just out of a, you know, typical mini dad in the moment, protecting your son.
100%.
You know,
I've had time to reflect, right? Like I've had time to see what happened. So, and as an example to this, if you asked me 4 days ago, my opinion of Tim Cotter, it would have been very bad.
Yeah.
I literally hammered Tim Cotter, like back and forth. Me and Brennan, when this initial claim went through, and the AMA guys are kind of getting their stuff together on like how they handle this, right? I didn't really realize Brennan didn't know. Like, I know who Tim Cotter is, but is he a rules official? Like, I didn't know, and he acted like he was, right? And so I am laying into Tim. Like, I mean, to be honest, in hindsight, I'm like, man, I was like just brutal on him.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like I'll openly apologize to him. If I get to see him in person, I'd like to say, hey, Tim, I'm sorry for that. Like I
We'll
was,
actually see this.
yeah, dude,
We'll
I was
actually-
hammering him, dude. Like I was just like, no, this is not right by the kid. He deserves that bike. You need to do right by. I mean, I was on Tim. And I got to say, like, Tim is an impressive individual. He's a big man. He's got a big commanding voice. He's really quick-witted, very smart. So I totally see how he's in the job that he's in. Like if I could hire the guy, which I can't afford the guy, he makes a million times more than I make. But wow, like what an impressive individual. But he literally said to me when this is going on, and this is after the initial claim and before Brennan gets pulled back in, like, this is not fair to Hayden Deegan. And I'm like, bullshit, you know, like, this is not fair to this kid right here. Like, I am hammering on Tim, right?
Yeah.
Now I've had time to reflect about what he was saying, and I totally get it. This is not fair to whoever gets their bike claimed. 100%. Like, the way the rule's written, Brennan had to do what he did. You have to do it that day, right? But now the person whose bike is claimed is like, oh my God, my bike is claimed. It's going to sit all night and I got to race tomorrow. And I can see Tim's perspective. Like, who is everybody, who is coming to Loretta's to watch? Like, who are there to watch? They're there to watch Hayden Deegan. And he's a promoter. That's what he wants. He wants him out there contending for championships, running up front. And that's not fair to Hayden Deegan. So now that I've had time to reflect, I actually totally get Tim's perspective. I did not get it at the time. Like I needed to sit down, look through the window that he looks through at life to really understand where he's coming from. And I would say he would say the same to me. Like, here I am advocating for this kid and I'm just hammering on him about this. And he needed to see my perspective as like, hey, if I don't advocate for this kid, then who will? Like, in my opinion, I didn't feel like AMA would, which they did. I didn't know they would. And I didn't feel like MX Sports would. So I'm advocating for this kid to make sure that, hey, this is a lot of freaking money. You deserve to get what you paid for. So yeah, that's part of that. Like, so I apologize to Tim. Like if I met you, I'm sorry. I was super hard on him. And I'll have to say he handled it incredibly well. He's a very smart individual.
I mean, worst case scenario, Brennan's got 17 grand to buy a couple new bikes with if no one wants to step up and support him.
100%, right? Yeah, I mean, nowadays that might be like one factory edition, but
yeah, exactly. And I assume you have the same perspective on Brian too, as like, hey, look, I understand, and even the live that got taken down, I didn't think it was that bad, right? Like he's still just giving his truth, right? Like he doesn't know how involved you were. He probably had people barking in his ear, right? That's how it goes. Is like when you're, especially at their level, where they're just like they're in, dude. They're like totally in. And
I personally, yeah, it's sad. I love the Deegans.
Yeah,
I watch their channel. I'm not going to say religiously, but I probably watch 3 out of however many videos a week they put out. Right? Like I don't watch TV. I watch YouTube. Yeah. I love the Deegans, and he's groomed himself what I think is going to be the biggest name in motocross, in supercross. Yeah. And quite frankly, I went and looked up his record book just yesterday. The kid is the real deal, right? Like there's no question. So yeah, I'm glad he took the video down because I think he said some things about me that are just categorically false. And it's probably why he took it down. He probably had someone say, or he thought about himself, you know what? I don't know for a fact about this stuff. Let me take this down. He doesn't want any problems with what could arise from saying stuff that's not true, right? So good for him. I have nothing against Brian. And personally, like what Brennan told me personally, again, I wasn't in the room, but personally what Brennan told me that happened to him, I would be on Brian's side too, right? Like, hey, what the heck? What is going on? We got a title to win tomorrow, right? So I totally get that. And that's actually where there's probably room for this rule to be amended and changed and fixed and improved. I think this is an opportunity for the AMA to say, hey, this really didn't work out because of the fact that he had to ride the next day. Maybe we should amend the rules so that you can claim the motorcycle after their last moto, right? Like that might be something worth talking about or whatever. I'm not a rule maker. I don't know, but definitely do see there's room for improvement in this entire process from, top to bottom.
Well, here's what I see too is you got a few things that are going to happen for sure. The factory is going to be just a little more careful, which is going to be, whether it really evens the playing field or not. I mean, we saw Deegan still win by a pretty good margin. He probably still had a pretty decent motor in that bike, but it's going to probably get them to change that portion of it where you can't take the bike till the end of the week and they can keep an eye on it or whatever. And then also it's just going to get people more aware of what's going on, which is all good, right? It doesn't feel good in the moment, but it is all good. So anyways, I just want to get to one last thing. We're going a little long on this one, but
Yeah.
the Matt Walker thing, Moto X Compound, he's got a good reputation from what I know as far as a trainer, and he obviously has some good riders coming out of his camp and a lot of riders over there. What was that situation like, if you care to speak on it at all?
Man, so I had a lot of respect for Matt Walker going in, prior to this. I've had a lot of clients of mine train there, ride there, really like Matt. And outwardly looking in, he's done great on social media. He's out there. You know who he is. His name's out there. What I witnessed under that tent, for lack of a better word, was bullying. Here is a kid who probably looks up to Matt. Like, he's trained with you for 3 years. You're kind of like a role model to him. And Matt is hammering on this kid like, hey, this is not right. You can't do this. And really hammering on him. And I don't know, like I said, I had Brennan's back. He's not, I probably spent 5 minutes with the show fields prior to Loretta's. Like, I've done some motors to them over the years. I met them at Freestone for like the first time. I shook their hands. And that's the first time I took a motor, like they gave me a motor. And like, oh, wow, they seem like a nice kid, right? And then Loretta's is the most time I've ever spent with them. And like, I have his back, right? Like, I have your back in the situation because you're a client of mine. And I would thought that Matt would have had the same situation, and he didn't. So I frankly, he did that. From what I witnessed, I feel like the kid was getting bullied in this situation from him. I will say personally that Donnie Lucci was very quiet for the most point. And his biggest comments were like, hey, we've got technology in this bike and a lot of money and time that we just don't want out. And we don't want this guy, pointing to me, looking at it. And I stuck my hand out and said, this is not my deal. I promise you, I will not open that motorcycle. I have nothing to do with this. And I stuck it straight to Donnie, and he just ignored me. 100%, like, acted like I wasn't there when I did that, which kind of pissed me off. At one point, Brennan kind of skipped over a part, and I'm going to leave that out because I think he was doing so to be kind to one of his sponsors. But basically, Brennan's dad and another individual are no longer in the tent. It's me, Matt Walker, Donnie Lucci, and Brennan. And we're like sitting in a circle where you could touch each individual, like right up on each other. And we're quiet because his dad had left. And I'm just trying to make small talk. Like, it's been awkwardly silent. And I'm like, hey, Matt, how's your business doing? And he explodes on me. He stands up, gets up in my face, threatens to beat my ass and yelling at the top of his lungs. And like, I'm a smug piece of, what? And I'm just going off on me. And I'm freaking out. Like, I'm like, is this guy really going to do this? Like, I'm backing up. I stand up. I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm about to get my ass beat by Matt Walker. Like, I don't need a broken jaw. Like, this is not exciting for me. I'm not in this for this, And I realized, like, wait a second. Like, there's no way he can go through with this. Donnie Lucci's right here. And if that happens, like, dude, I'm done. Like, I am like, this is going big, right? You just hit me, and then this is over. And then, to Matt Walker's credit, he didn't. I think he actually restrained himself 100%. I actually think it was planned. I think this was something to try to get a rise out of me and see what kind of character, I'm made of. So that really freaked out Brennan. It was very obvious. Like, Brennan stood up, was like, whoa, like, what's going on here? The dad ran back in, he was out of the pit. He heard this. I mean, this is loud. Runs back in, and I left. Like, I'm out. Matt Walker asked me to leave at that. He was yelling at me, I'm going to beat your ass, get out of my pits, the whole works. So I left. I'm like, dude, I don't want any part of this. I don't want to be violent. I don't want to get my ass beat. I can't believe this just happened. I can't believe Yamaha would associate with an individual that would do that. I can't believe Matt Walker would do that. Like, that just blew my mind. So I left. And at that point, I can corroborate all of what Brennan said, up to that point. And then I left, and I have no idea what was said with deals. If there was a deal struck, if Yamaha promised him anything, I wasn't there. So I can't corroborate that, but I do know that, a couple minutes later, the deal was pulled or whatever. The claim was pulled.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Well, Brennan kind of he said he felt pressured out of the deal, which is, obviously there's a lot of, it's hard, man. I've been in the situation. I've been in the situation many, many times where you're like, oh, wow, like this, and word travels fast in motocross too. And every word that every mouth that exchanges, there's a word that's different. And by the time it's just like back in school where they give you a word at the front, and by the time it gets to the back, it's completely different. And this is exactly what's happening, poor kid. And really all of them, because everything can be misconstrued, including, against you and for you and all that stuff. So anyways, it's a bummer, but I do appreciate, I got to kind of cut us off here. We're coming up on time, but I do appreciate you coming on and speaking your truth. I think that's, honorable from everyone to step up and say, like, tell their story and not be afraid of getting shamed from the industry and telling it for what it is. And like, I don't want to say calling people out, because I don't really think it is that when you're telling the truth. I think when you're calling people out, it's like, hey, if you want drama, okay, we're calling people out. Like, I like to call people out to do lap time challenges for fun as some foreign character, like a redneck or something. That's fun.
Hey, so Brian Deegan did call me out. Oh, some motor builder. He's just nobody. I don't know who he is. So I got a challenge, and I actually looked this up last night. And I think I lost. But since 2017, my shop has brought home 7 Loretta's titles. And 4 of those titles are in premier classes: Super Mini 1, Super Mini 2, Schoolboy 2, and 258. All of those clients pay me, and no deal, right? I was looking up, how many titles does Star have since 2017? And to be honest, originally I counted 6. But I think I missed 2 titles with LeBlanc when he rode like 450B or something like that or whatever. So we may be like 7 and 7, but this janky little motor builder over here, which, hey, you've been to my shop, is nothing pretty. It's nothing special, but I'm really proud of what we've accomplished. And if Brian can't appreciate that, good for him. He's a bad dude. I don't ever have his kind of money.
But he doesn't build motors. Whatever, he builds other things, and he's a smart guy, and he's built businesses and built plenty of things. But you guys are different people. You have different brains and different outlooks, and we're all different in that respect.
So if he wants to talk trash, that's a little trash talking. Hey, we're not doing so bad. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, that's a little trash talking I'll throw out. But honestly, that's all in good jest. At the end of the day, we're blessed to even be surviving. We're blessed to be in business. I'm just super, super blessed to know you, to know any individual in this industry that we've hooked up with, connected with. So, thanks to all my clients. It's incredible that I can still do this for a career.
Yeah, and I think that whatever. I've gotten some pretty good starts at Supercross on the motor belt that I probably shouldn't have got. But anyways, I think you're doing the right thing, and I think Brennan is too, and I think everyone feels as if they are. There's a story that I heard from a guy that was in the war that basically picked up a rock and killed someone barehanded in a war. You might have heard it on Joe Rogan, but the thought that he had right before he cracked this dude in the skull was that the sad part about this is they both felt like that they were doing the right thing.
100%. Yeah. Perspective is everything, right? I don't remember the book. I don't know if the moral of the story of the book was, it's like the bell jar, but it's like, we view life through the lens we see it through. And so until you can see life through the lens that somebody else sees it through, you just really don't know.
Yep, 100%. And we got to have compassion towards people in that way. And I think that everyone's doing a fairly good job at that. And I appreciate you coming on and explaining your truth and telling your truth, and also having Brennan's back. I think that's pretty honorable. And we'll see where this pans out. Hopefully it works out for everyone. It's not too much negative and the positive starts to roll around. We all have room to grow from this, right? So anyway,
I would like it to go away, right? Like,
but it might not.
I don't know. But, there's a rule there. If you're a parent, you want to exercise it, do it. Now you know, right? But at the end of the day, like, this has kicked a hornet's nest that I never imagined.
That's all good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk with you soon, Derek.
Hey, thanks, Tyler. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll see you, buddy.